So we're going to continue trigonometry this week. You are going to have a test on Friday. So to start this lesson, it says recall from geometry. There are two right triangles with special properties that we will need to use to find exact values. Anytime you see the words exact values in a problem, these are the values we are referring to. So we have this one here called the 45, 45, 90 triangle because those are our angles, 45, 45, and 90. So it says evaluate the following: sine of 45, cosine of 45, and tangent of 45. So if you remember from last week with trig, we use SOHCAHTOA. So to get sine of 45, we are going to use one of the 45-degree angles. It does not matter which one. The side opposite the right angle, remember, is your hypotenuse. I'm going to use the top angle of 45. So opposite that angle is down on the bottom. That one is my opposite side. So the other one, that is my adjacent side. And sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so 1 over radical 2. Cosine 45 is adjacent over hypotenuse. So again, you end up with 1 over radical 2. And tangent 45, opposite over adjacent, 1 over 1. Simplifies to just 1. The second special right triangle, if you remember it, if not, we're going over it right now, is the 30, 60, 90 triangle. So again, we're going to evaluate, and again, we are going to use SOHCAHTOA. So across from the right angle, the hypotenuse is the 2. And now, depending on which ones we're doing, it is going to change which angle we use. So to start with the 3 on the left, we're going to use sine. We're going to use the 30 up at the top. So opposite the 30 is the 1. So adjacent to the 30 is the radical 3. So sine of 30 opposite over hypotenuse is 1/2. Cosine 30 adjacent over hypotenuse is radical 3 over 2. And tangent of 30 opposite over adjacent is radical 3. But now to do the next 3, we're going to now use the 60-degree angle. So now opposite the 60-degree angle is the radical 3, and adjacent to it is the 1. So sine of 60 opposite over hypotenuse, we now have radical 3 over 2. Cosine 60 adjacent over hypotenuse, we now have 1 over 2. And tangent of 60 opposite over adjacent, we have radical 3 over 1, and anything divided by 1 is itself. So all of these you do technically have to have memorized. We do sum them up in a chart here. For example, we just did tangent of 60. So in the chart, if I wanted to find it, tangent of 60, they overlap in this box. So tangent of 60 is radical 3, which is what we got above. So this is just a different way to use it. 3 of them are a little bit different than what we got from the triangles, but we're going to refer to the ones in the chart. They do mean the same thing. They're just written differently. So on this page here, we're going to practice using this chart. So for the first one, it says sine of 30 times cosine of 45. So let's start with sine of 30. So again, we're going to go to sine, and we're going to go to the 30, and where they overlap, that is your answer. So 1/2 times, we're going to now do the same thing for cosine of 45. Cosine and 45, they overlap at radical 2 over 2. So cosine of 40 is radical 2 over 2. When you multiply fractions, you're going to multiply the tops straight across and then the bottoms. So the tops, 1 times radical 2 is radical 2. And on the bottom, 2 times 2 is 4. And there is your final answer. Number 2 is asking us to find secant of 60. So if you remember from Thursday last week, secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So since we want secant of 60, we want the reciprocal of cosine 60. So cosine and 60, they meet at the 1/2. So cosine of 60 is 1/2, which means secant of 60, reciprocal means flip it, is 2 over 1, which is 2. Number 3, we have 2 different things happening here in the numerator and denominator. So starting with the numerator, sine of 30, we're going to go find the sine and the 30. They overlap at 1/2. Then we're going to do the bottom, tangent of 45 is 1. And anything divided by 1 is itself. So 1/2 divided by 1 is 1/2. So next one, the numerator, sine of 45. We have sine of 45. They overlap at radical 2 over 2. Now, cosecant 45, cosecant, remember, is the reciprocal of sine. So sine 45 is radical 2 over 2. We just found that for the top. So the reciprocal of that to get cosecant would be 2 over radical 2. So now for this one, if they are being divided, we have radical 2 over 2 divided by 2 over radical 2. Division, if you remember from the beginning of the year, division, we keep the first one, change it from division to multiplication, and then flip the second one. And now multiplying, just like what we did in question 1, we're going to multiply the 2 tops together. Radical 2 times radical 2 is radical 4, and radical 4 is 2. And on the bottom, 2 times 2 is 4. No simplifying there, so the 4 comes over, and then 2/4 is 1/2. Now notice in number 5, it says tangent squared of 30 degrees. So we're going to start by finding tangent of 30. So going to our table, tangent of 30 is radical 3 over 3. And then because it was being squared, we're going to square the radical 3 over 3. So this is from our last unit. Radical 3 on top is going to get squared, and the 3 on the bottom is going to get squared. So on top, the radical and the squared cancel out, and you're left with just the 3. On the bottom, 3 squared is 9, and 3 over 9 is 1/3. There we go. Number 6, secant squared of 60 degrees. Secant, remember, is the reciprocal of cosine. Cosine of 60, we have cosine 60 is 1/2. So that means secant of 60 is 2 over 1, which is 2. But this needs to get squared. It said secant squared. So 2 squared, you should get 4 as your final answer. Last question. Cotangent 45. This, remember, is the reciprocal of tangent 45. So going to the table, tangent 45 is 1. So that means cotangent of 45, 1 flipping it with the reciprocal is still 1, plus sine of 30, sine of 30 is 1/2, minus secant 60, secant, remember, is the reciprocal of cosine. So cosine 60 is 1/2. So the reciprocal flipping it is 2 over 1, which is 2. So now from here, adding and subtracting, you can do this right on your calculator if you want. 1 plus 1/2 minus 2. You should get negative 1/2 or negative 0.5. So there's some different problems for you. All of them are just pulling these values from the chart. And again, this is whenever you see the words exact value. It's asking you to evaluate these, and we want the exact value. As always, let me know if you have any questions. I'd be happy to help.